We'll get into some of Ouyang's toxic masculinity issues later. So, hi y'all, and welcome back to Unabridged Adventures. I am Ilana, and this is my channel for all the bookish things that I like to talk about. So I'm definitely filming this directly after my previous review for She Who Became the Sun. So if you haven't watched that, you might want to go check that out. This will be a very spoiler-filled video, so if you haven't read the book yet, I definitely recommend that you do that first, because this will give away so many things. But I'll be waiting for you to come back and catch up, so happy reading. For those of you that have read She Who Became the Sun, I have so many things that I want to talk to you about. So if you agree, if you disagree, if you have extra thoughts, like anything, please put it down in the comments below. I would love to chat with you. So, getting into things, because I don't know how long this video is going to be. I kind of want to not have it be like another half an hour long video. So, one of the things that I mentioned in my review was the binary breaking aspects of it, because that was something that really stood out to me and I felt was like a reoccurring theme within the different other themes, if that makes any sense. So basically, I've kind of broken it down into like gender, race, and the idea of like and unlike in different like aspects to talk about. So to begin with gender, you have this idea of like male and female, and that's it. There's nothing else. Like, it's very much a binary system, and yet our two main characters both kind of defy the system, and the system, as we can see, kind of collapses around them whenever that happens, whether it is by one person murdering a whole bunch of others, or the other one kind of playing the system. Either way, the system no longer works. So you have Ouyang, who is physically male, identifies as a man, and would be seen as a man if not for the fact that he is a eunuch, and has lost, like, his manliness, like, in their minds has been taken away from him. Like, he's no longer a man in a lot of people's eyes. And so you have this conflict where people aren't seeing him as a man whenever he sees himself as one, as opposed to where Sue is literally being seen as a man despite the fact that she is not one. And so you have this kind of opposite thing happening, but his is very open. Everyone knows what happened to him, whereas to everyone else, Sue is just another guy there, another monk, another like rebel. Whatever you see him as, Sue is just a man, whereas she's actually someone born as a woman and does not have the same experiences as a man to begin with. So I just thought that was absolutely fascinating and was one of the most like in-your-face binaries that is really messed with in this book. And I adored getting to see like how both these characters navigate the system, like take advantage of it, and just really kind of use every scrap of their knowledge and experience to take down the people that have hurt them. And oh, it's so good. It is so good. Oh my god. Sorry, I'm literally just thinking about different parts of the book and how much I love it. So I'm really interested to see how Sue's like perception of herself changes, because we have it starting off with like the fact that she really thinks that she needs to like embody her brother fully and needs to be a man even in her head. And despite that, I thought it was interesting that the book still uses she her pronouns when discussing what's going on with Sue, and I just thought that was really interesting, because even Sue is kind of trying in their head to see themselves as a man, and the book is saying, no, like, you are still a woman at heart, or you are still not a man at heart. Okay, sorry, the dogs had to go outside, so I had to get up and stop everything, but we're back. So while we're still on the topic of gender, I also want to talk about how interesting it is that both main characters have like positions in life that they are supposed to be like above things, kind of. With Su being a monk and Ouyang being a eunuch. And kind of the differences in how they interact with women, I thought was really interesting. We'll get into some of Ouyang's toxic masculinity issues later, but just how, like, even at the monastery, whenever there were female monks there, like, the male monks were, like, guarded. Like, even these people that are supposed to be above, like, wanting sex and, like, these earthly desires were still not trusted. Whereas a eunuch, who I did have to Google this, I'll be honest, so I now have that fun search history, which was eunuchs can still have sex, but they are, like, Ouyang is still allowed in the women's area and still not seen as, like, a man or a threat to women at all. And so I thought that was really interesting, the difference between, like, the monks that are supposed to be completely above this and not even considering sex being guarded, whereas the eunuch that is still expected to have, like, worldly desires and still can have sex is not seen as someone that needs to be kept away from the women. And so I thought those were just a really interesting dynamic that was presented there. So the second binary that I thought was really interesting to see how Parker Chan kind of manipulated it and played with it throughout the book was that of race and kind of the relationship between ethnicity and culture. So you've pretty much got three characters that I think really kind of are best used to kind of break this binary, because we're presented with the idea of there being the Mongols and the Han. And they're also called, like, the Nanren and the Semu. And they are presented as being, like, you're either one or the other. Like, you are either Mongol or Han, you're either Semu or Nanren, and you can't be both. But we have a character that is both. We have Wang Baoxiang, who is Esen's adopted brother, and he is half Mongol and half Han. And he really has embraced his Han heritage and cultural values in what he does every day. And it's something that really angers, I guess, his father and disappoints his brother, because they want him to be this perfect Mongol and see his other heritage, his Han heritage, as being a weakness. And Baoxiang actually uses a lot of his talents that he has learned by embracing his Han heritage of, like, managing the properties, like doing more of the kind of paperwork stuff. And he's actually keeping their kind of state or province very prosperous. He's the one that is keeping them from just, like, collapsing, and they can't see that because he is not being the perfect Mongol and getting, like, completely ignoring his Han heritage and going out and leading a battalion. And that is a conflict that we really see throughout the whole book, and I absolutely love just the way that, like, he isn't ashamed of his Han heritage, even whenever he's made to feel constantly like he should be. And I thought it was really amazing to see that, like, as one of the first examples of this binary, like, not really fitting as well as it's supposed to. So the second obvious one of that would be Ouyang. He is, like, completely Nanren. He is full-blooded Han, and he, like, speaks Hanair. He grew up as Han, his family was Han, like, all of that. But after his family was massacred, he was raised completely in the Mongol culture. And even when speaking to, like, other Han people, they, like, see him as Mongolian. Like, he's talking to Shang, and Shang goes, well, yeah, but, like, you're Mongol. Like, he's not comfortable speaking in Hanair. He like, has a lot of the same Mongol cultural values. And it was just really interesting to see that he's struggling with this because he's trying to honor his ancestors and, like, get revenge, but he also still feels this connection to the culture that he was raised within. I can't remember the exact quote, but it was after Ouyang kills Esen. He's speaking to like his army now, and he says he realized that he might never speak Mongolian again. And then it goes, but his native language held no comfort. It felt like a cold leather glove that had been pried from a corpse. His Mongol self was dead, but there was no other to take its place. And so, like, even as someone that is full-blooded non-Ren, he is still, like, the only connection to culture that he has is Mongol. He has he doesn't even feel comfortable as, like, the person that he should have been if his family hadn't died. He doesn't feel comfortable speaking Han. He doesn't feel comfortable, like, really connecting with his culture the way that Baoxiang does, despite the fact that Baoxiang is, like, technically, by blood, more Mongol than Ouyang. And I loved kind of the parallels there. And then the third character that's actually, like, very separate from the other two, because the other two are interacting a lot, kind of comparing their experiences. And Ma Xiuying, she is full-blooded Mongol, like kind of the opposite of Ouyang, where she's full-blooded Mongol, but she was raised in like the Han rebels and the Han rebellion, and so she is kind of seen by everyone around her as non-Ren. She is like treated just like any non-Ren in their area, and so there isn't this divide there culturally, because she is fully immersed in the culture regardless of her physical race. And so she kind of presents as the opposite of Ouyang, which I thought was a very interesting way to have like one full-blooded, because we're talking about physical race versus culture, or ethnicity versus culture. And so one like full Mongol, who is Ma, one full non-Ren, who is Ouyang, and then having the like half non-Ren, half Mongol that is Baoxiang, presents a really interesting dynamic that you can see the different ways that ethnicity and culture really work within this book, and I absolutely loved it. I know I've said that so many times, but it was so good and just amazing to read and really well done, because this isn't an in-your-face thing. This is something that's a bit more subtle and really just made the book like even better. And so the last one is a bit more like an abstract thing to examine, and that would be the concepts of like and unlike. And we see this a lot in the book, where like Su sees Ouyang at the monastery and just immediately feels this connection of this person is like me. Like there is a likeness here. And even Baoxiang later in the book says like calls to like, or like recognizes like. And this idea that these people are the same in some way. And what I thought was interesting was that Ouyang doesn't really feel this connection to either of them. But we start the book believing that there's this sameness between Ouyang and Su because she feels this connection. And there's really not. There's this kind of like misunderstanding between the two of them almost, where they have very different experiences, very different life experiences, and they see the world in completely separate ways. So even though they both kind of challenge the gender system that has been set up and the gender binary, they, as people, are completely different. And so this idea of just looking at this one thing and being like, yes, this is alike, therefore they must be alike in other like parts of themselves, is proven wrong after like Ouyang nearly kills Su and goes, well, you know, I'm gonna save you, but like you're gonna wish you were dead. Like, I'm not gonna kill you, but I'm gonna make you wish that I had. And so he mutilates her, like he amputates her arm pretty much. He cuts her arm off and says like, your men will never follow you. Like you will never be respected as a man ever again. Because he is relating Su's experiences to his, where he was mutilated and then was never respected or seen as a man again. And he had this expectation that he would be the perfect man growing up. He would be a good son. He would be a good man. And Sue never had this experience. And so when this happens, she goes, well, kind of that sucks, but you got to keep moving forward. Like, you got to keep going. This isn't going to ruin things. And it just kind of shows and highlights how different they are fundamentally as people. Like, they might have this one similarity, but the rest is completely different. Whereas later on, whenever, like, even Baoxiang says this out loud, is that like calls to like recognizes like, and he actually helps Ouyang's plan to take down his brother, not because they have this similarity in the gender binary, or even really the race binary, but just because they have similar destinies. And this was something that Baoxiang finally like embraced. They were similar in their motivations, they were similar in their previous experiences, and kind of like they were raised with the idea that they would be good, and then they were a disappointment. And so having that previous experience that shaped them as people had them connecting in a way that Ouyang and Shu just did not connect. So seeing the way that, like, even at the very beginning of the book, the author sets up this idea of like and unalike, and then even goes and undermines that. Like, not even this societal idea, but just this concept that the author created and then destroys, was just so well done and made reading more interesting, because you believe that they have this connection, that Ouyang and Su like understand each other on some level, and they just don't. And it's all because of this very surface level connection. They just don't click on a more deeper level. It was just absolutely fascinating to see how the author manipulates this binary of like concepts. I love it. And God, I could talk about so many more things here. I don't want to take forever, so I just want to talk quickly about like Esen and Ouyang and kind of their relationship, while also touching on some of their toxic masculinity. So, of course, there is stuff happening there. They are in love with each other, regardless of whether they admit it or not. Gosh, honestly, to me, they are just like the better, more nuanced Achilles and Patroclus. Just the relationship of like leader and general, like just love it. But of course, Esen is a terrible person, which we don't really get to see a lot, I think, because we're only really seeing him from his perspective and from Ouyang's perspective. And Ouyang, of course, is in love with him and doesn't recognize a lot of his actions for what they are and how terrible they are. So it was really interesting, because you feel really, or at least I did, felt really sympathetic to him, of like, he's someone that grew up in the system. He doesn't understand why in his mind his brother is rebelling. He doesn't understand why Ouyang keeps himself separate. He doesn't understand like a lot of the things going on there. Yeah, so like while reading, rationally I know he's not a good person. I know I should not be rooting for him at all. But the moment that really just made me stop feeling anything for Esen was whenever he like leaned over to Ouyang and just said, "You really are as pretty as a woman." And I could feel that stab in the heart like Ouyang did, and just, oh, that hurt, because you really see that like he knows that Esen doesn't completely understand him, but this is just like the last straw. Like, this is the final proof that he will never understand. That like this was going to happen anyway, but like there's no way they could have avoided this. And it hurt, but it also really that was just like the moment. And so that, as well as the general like sexist way that Ouyang and Esen speak, act, like all of that, the way they talk about Esen's wives, the fact that none of his wives are even named in the book, like they aren't worth giving names to, really kind of underlined how masculine and how sexist the Mongol culture was in the book. Again, don't know much of the history, but it serves to really underline how subversive Shu is being whenever she's going around and kind of like radicalizing women, like the widow who takes over the city and like convincing Ma that she can actually want things, she can do things with her life, and like these other women that I'm sure she's going to come across, like it really shows that this isn't just some like woman sitting there going, I can't really do anything. Like, this is such an ingrained part of the culture that like the idea that you could do something besides just get married isn't even out there. Gosh, I have so many more things I want to talk about with this. Like, please leave me like comments and stuff. I might make another one of these with more of my thoughts, and like respond to anything you guys put down there, because this book is so good. I cannot wait until the sequel comes out. I'm gonna have to figure out when that is, because like I am going to be right there. I'm so excited. So yeah, please let me know any of your thoughts down below. Check out my socials, all of that. Please come scream with me about this book because it's so good. But yeah, sorry, there's just so much to talk about. But with this video, I really wanted to focus on the like breaking of binaries and then the relationship between Esen and Ouyang. So see you next time. Goodbye.